In the 232nd Block Talks, we explore crypto compliance with Stephen Sargeant, founder of Airdropd, and discuss how content creation plays a part in its education. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Blockdrops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody, I'm here with Stephen Sargeant, who's going to tell us who he is and what he does with blockchain. This is a long overdue recorded conversation. Welcome to BlockTalks.
Thank you. I'm excited. I've seen so many different guests come on the podcast. I've seen the work that you're doing in this space, and it's great to be here. Basically, what we do right now is I have a company called Airdropd with a D at the end. We create really high quality, engaging content that's very LinkedIn first for a very crypto compliance or blockchain investigations company. So your audience probably knows like Chainalysis, Nota Bene, Asset Reality. So anyone that touches fintech or crypto that has a compliance or cybersecurity aspect. My origins are from 2018, where I started working as the first AML investigator or anti money laundering investigator, crypto investigator at one of the biggest exchanges, Bitfinex. And I always was posting on LinkedIn. So one day I decided, what if I post for other companies and not just for myself? And we've built quite a big business, probably the biggest crypto compliance focused marketing agency in the industry right now over the last 3.5 years.
The sheer existence of your business is very contrarian to popular belief that crypto is just more rampant on crime and terrorist financing and fraud than the traditional markets, right? I think that's something that if hopefully we'll demystify in this conversation. But before we go into that, how did you end up in crypto in the first place? Because is this your first? It's not your first career. What was the backstory on you running into crypto or crypto running into you?
It's funny because I host a podcast and we run the podcast now called Around the Coin Podcast. So those that have been crypto for over a decade, they probably remember, Mike Townsend, Brian Romilly, Faisal Khan. Back in, I was a paralegal back in 2015, and I was listening and working with a company that bought all or created all the checks for the big banks. But even they realized that business was only going to last for so long. So they were buying up a bunch of financial technology or fintech companies. And I asked the president one day, like, how can I be more relevant as a paralegal? And he's like, well, you better figure out about fintech because that's the direction we're going. And when I started Googling and searching fintech, the Around the Coin podcast was one of the few podcasts that came up. And all they were doing was talking about blockchain and Bitcoin. And this was when, Bitcoin was at $700. And I was like, this sounds a lot more interesting than being paralegal and checking bankruptcy reports. So I made a vow that day I want to get into this industry. I reached out to Faisal Khan, who was the host at that time, and he gave me an email back within 10 minutes of the things I should do: document and post about my transition, use my legal research and writing skills to get into the compliance side. Because even back then, they realized that regulations were going to come because those guys have been in payments for 2 decades. So they know that eventually regulations are going to catch up to any technology. And that's what I did. I started out working at a bank doing AML investigations, but I always wanted to get into crypto. And when I was posting about crypto and AML on LinkedIn every day, the head of the CCO of the Bitfinex reached out. I was like, hey, do you want to do investigations for us? And I was like, yeah. So that's how it all started. That's how I finally cracked into crypto.
Given that you have a non-crypto background and you're a lawyer, can you help us understand the differences between life like in AML land or KYC land in TradFi versus AML land, KYC land in crypto? And I want to go into that, the controversy of being traceable, immutable, and all that. But give us a little bit of what's the nuance between one and the other. And granted, we're in 2026, Bitcoin 17 years old at this stage, so a lot has evolved, a lot has changed. But what would be the snapshot now?
That's interesting. Just to confirm, I'm a paralegal. Although my ego loved that you called me a lawyer, paralegal in Canada is just like, several rungs lower than the actual lawyer.
It's like me in drumming. People say, "Oh, you're a musician." I say, "No." "Oh, you're a drummer then." I say, "No. I play the drums." So it's like, okay. So you're a paralegal by training and by
Yeah,
trade. So
but
what's that?
I think the biggest difference when I was working at a bank versus like a crypto exchange is that the investigations, the transactions are really happening in real time. When you work at a bank, you're looking at transactions that happen usually 3, 6 months, a year ago, and you're trying to make sense of it. When you're working at a crypto exchange, somebody's trying to withdraw money in that instance. They're trying to withdraw their Bitcoin, and you've received an alert that there might be some type of suspicious activity. You have to investigate and be able to either approve or deny that request to withdraw the funds within hours, within the time they expect their transaction to be completed. And that's just not the case when you're working in traditional institutions. I think most people, the biggest thing, you'd be surprised on how easy it is to actually trace and investigate funds in crypto that are open on public blockchains. You see Zach XBT, I think, just released, a big thing yesterday. You have people on Twitter that are doing investigations, and that's how FTX got brought down too, right? Doing crypto investigations, limited experience, but because the blockchain is so transparent, if you just take the time to dive in and research it, you're able to come up with somewhat of conclusions. You can't do that in traditional banking. You don't know who the customers are at these banks. You don't know what happens from the time you deposit that $20 into the ATM versus when you go to a teller and get a cashier's check to make a deposit on your first home. So the difference is that everyone can see what funds are going. If I'm at Binance, or if I see, hey, is Binance, I'm just using them as an example, is connected to a sanctioned entity, I can see every transaction between Binance and that sanctioned entity. I can't do that for Santander Bank or JP Morgan. I wouldn't know who the person is unless I have access to the account. So although it's really great for a crypto exchange to work in real time, regulators can also see exactly what exposure that crypto exchange happens in real time. So if you have sanctions exposure, you don't have the benefit of weeks or months to do that investigation. You have to do it immediately because the regulators are using the same tools that you are to do your investigations, and they can see the second you have that exposure once those sanction designations are concluded. And I think that's the toughest part from dealing in a bank where you have a lot more time, a lot more bandwidth to do these investigations. To in crypto, everything's happening instantaneously, and it happens a lot, a lot, and very often.
I take from what you just said that we're finally arriving at a circumstance where there is what I would call on chain oversight on the side of the regulatory agencies and the law enforcement and everything, which was such a long time coming. For the longest time, we had the regulators just saying, this is a vehicle for money laundering and terrorist financing. It's all anonymous and it's private. We can't do anything. And multiple people from our industries were into hearings and lectures and workshops with regulators explaining that it's the opposite of what you're saying. You're projecting. You can see it is immutable. You can see the backstory of every transaction. Therefore, you should be taking this as part of your regulatory remit to actually go do your own investigation on chain. And finally, obviously, I think the fact that we have found some asset class legitimacy as an industry, they were forced to, and thankfully there were builders that were building for that. You mentioned a few. We have obviously with the inception of AI, we're seeing a lot more intelligence being made available on chain. Now, what's the conversation been like with regulators in your experience or legislators as you do the work that you do? How do you feel their stance changing? Is this already everywhere? Every regulator already knows that they have to do this. Which ones are the best regulators have been working with? Because we know that they might not say this, but they are keeping an eye out with the quote unquote competition as well. So just give me a little bit of a flavor on what has been the conversation and how much better they're getting.
You know what's interesting, and I want to maybe level set this for your audience. You know who the regulators actually are? The banks are actually the de facto regulators. Because let's just say the regulators are saying, hey, you have to do minimum requirements here. Well, if you're going to run a crypto exchange or run a crypto business, you have to have banking relationships. So you have to meet the bank's requirements, not the regulators' requirements, the bank's requirements, which are usually pretty stiff, right? Because they're taking on the risk, especially with a lot of those correspondent banking relationships. So it's the banks that you have to kind of meet their requirements, and the banks are feeding off of what the regulators are saying. So this is a perfect example that you were bringing up. Is like, look at the OCC in the U.S. For years they're like, hey, the banks can touch crypto, but we wouldn't if we were you. So the banks aren't going to go headfirst into digital assets when their regulators are saying, yeah, you can touch crypto, but wink, wink, we wouldn't really do that if we were a banking institution. And that might not be the exact paraphrase from what the OCC said, but going back to what happened last year, where OCC now is saying, hey, we're giving out trust, licenses, like this complete shift has happened now that some of the bigger institutions are coming into the place. And I think regulators feel more comfortable because those bigger institutions are regulated by a lot of these banks and requirements that have to do with traditional financial institutions. And because they're getting into the space, any actors like Coinbase or Binance or any kind of actors that want to participate with these digital asset companies or with these banking institutions, traditional institutions, know that they have to have a high level of excellence and standard of excellence when it comes to compliance. So I think the regulator conversation has changed. I think a lot of people were waiting on the US because a lot of the dollar denominated stablecoins and everything else is really, really going to be leveraged on what's happening in the US. But we've seen, like in Dubai and even in Abu Dhabi, they have their own regulators when it comes to crypto assets. Dubai has VARA, which is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. We're seeing everything that's coming out of the EU. It's ownersome. And if compliance isn't your focus, you're probably going to be priced out of the market. You're not going to be able to play with the big players if you're not doing things compliantly, which is usually a bad business model.
Yeah, and then you're left with the bottom of the barrel clients that are only looking at you or for you to do their shady businesses anyway, and that's obviously jeopardizing the longevity of your business, which is what we've seen in the early days of crypto. um, I notice you in your content, both you and the agency, you have a wide variety of things you talk about. Can you give me an idea on how you select the topics and what the process is to get to something that is compelling, engaging, and that would absolutely educate? Because most of the stuff you put out is highly educational. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I get to see your stuff, and I get to learn a bunch about that particular corner of the industry, which is something that I understand, but I'm not deep into. But the content you put out is absolutely something that is enlightening in that direction. So what's your process there?
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you. That means a lot. We spend a lot of time creating content. I think two things help us really, really well. One, we're partnered and our clients are some of the biggest in the industry. And when you're creating content for a lot of the companies that are interconnected, they're all trying to fight crypto crime and they're all doing blockchain investigations. You have a lot of context on what's happening in that specific niche. The majority of our content is going to be based on crypto compliance, fintech, cybersecurity. It's going to be within that realm. What we try to do, I think, a little bit differently because I own my own agency, and yes, we do have clients, so we do have to be careful on some of the things we say and how we say it. Is we try to provide those insights that are somewhat unbiased, and we are going to have some biases, but we let people know this is our bias. But even with that bias, these are the insights that we're seeing, and I think that's hard for companies to do. They can't put out content like that because if you work for Binance, you're never going to put out content that talks about Coinbase, right? Whereas we can talk about both these companies, we can be open and honest on what we think about both these companies. And I think it's hard for any one company to do that unless you don't have ties to specific companies. And I think that's what makes our content really engaging. Plus, we talk a lot about what's happening on our platform of choice, which is LinkedIn. So I've been on LinkedIn for 8 years. I spend hours a day on LinkedIn. So I know the little bit of the nuances. And to be quite honest, Mauricio, I'm not scared to say some of the things that people may not agree with, right? And I try to make it so that my intent isn't to like we all have, I'm sure customers of ours can say, hey, you're not a perfect agency. Every crypto exchange, everyone in crypto has a little bit of something wrong with it. Any business has a little bit of what's something wrong. I'm not scared to admit our faults in our agency, and I'm not scared to call out crypto exchanges that are sending money to like people that run the Silk Road or used to run the Silk Road and say, hey, that's kind of silly, right? And although they may not like it, we're not here to criticize them. We love those exchanges and we'll talk highly about them in other places. But for those specific things, we're not scared to talk about it and educate people. And more importantly, our content is to put people in a position where they can add in their thoughts. I think when a lot of people put out content, they're like, hey, look at us and what we're doing and what we're selling. Like, there's no room for feedback. There's no room for other people's opinions. It's all call to action. Buy this, register for this webinar. It's not like, hey, guys, this is what I think. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I've talked to a few people about. Like, where am I missing things? Add in something that I'm missing. And I think that's always been a place where we've created a platform where people can share their ideas. And I'm not going to judge them because that's how I learned, similar to probably you, preparing for podcasts, listening to people speak. You're like, oh, this is, I'm learning the nuances of this industry. I don't feel that I'm an expert. I'm just sharing all the things that I'm learning and hoping people can add to that conversation.
Yeah, learning in public is something that I feel enriches a lot the learning journey, etc., but also creates a lot of this kind of dialogue, which, in my experience, having been shadow banned by LinkedIn for about a year, it really killed the ability to actually have those engaging conversations and provoke those engaging conversations with the content that we put out. I see this as a shared responsibility, as this is such a new industry, to just tell people like it is. And I love that you acknowledge your bias, because this is one of the things that, for me, in traditional media, we lost it, right? People tend to think that journalism is unbiased, and it's impossible. We've at a point, both in terms of the history of humanity and technology, that we have to acknowledge that it's impossible not to have a bias. But then if you put the bias forth and you create the context in which the bias is known and intangible, then the conversation has a better ground of happening, rather than just being a bunch of assumptions in misdirections, which I think it's terrible for debate and public discourse at the same time. And I feel that LinkedIn, even though it was the perfect platform for that to happen, they pivoted recently to a much more B2B salesy type environment. I've been on the platform since 2004. This is 22 years on the platform, and I've seen every era of LinkedIn, and this is probably my least favorite era of the platform, to be honest.
I miss the era where you could just talk about like taking a chance on people and get like 1 million followers and then write 1 million books and just change the title every year to like leadership for AI, leadership for cannabis, leadership. I miss that era. I really wish I went full cringe during that era and just amassed a ridiculous amount. And I think what people don't realize is like going viral on LinkedIn is not a good, like nothing good comes from going viral on LinkedIn. As someone that's gone viral on a couple of my posts, and I see why I've gone viral, because I gave way too much information, I think, that my wife would have liked, and it gave room for people to criticize maybe some of the decisions I made. But it felt good just saying, "Hey, I told my wife to take 5 months off. Now, losing sleep because I just started a business, and that goes viral because everyone could say, well, you should have lived more humbly, or you shouldn't have did." And it's like I kind of like that. I'm a little bit of a troll too. I like to have fun with it. I think one thing that people do in any industry is they take themselves a little too seriously. Like they, especially like when you're us, we're media personalities. We put ourselves out there. Like we cannot get high on people saying that we're great. The same way we're not going to get high on or get mad when people are like, "Hey, you're only saying that because you work with Chain House." And like, it's like I don't take. I take both of those the same way. It's like, guys, I'm just putting out content. This stuff feeds in my. I can sometimes I lose sleep at night because I have these ideas flowing in my head. To your question about how do you come up with these ideas, they just flow in my head, and if I don't get them out there, I'll literally lose sleep. I have to just put them out there and see, does anyone else think the same way I do? I'm not looking to get viral. I'm not looking to get 1 million views. I'm just wondering, does somebody see the same things that I do? And what's interesting about LinkedIn is that none of that will come out. You won't see them in the comments. It's the direct messages where people are like, "Hey, I like that post. Can't comment it because of where I work, but you're so right." And it's like those are the where I have the majority of the conversations are behind the scenes talking and connecting with people. And I think if salespeople saw that, they would be more inclined to have more organic conversations on LinkedIn that would probably drive more sales. But they're so focused on like automating everything and getting off the platform, they're missing out on really where the juice is on LinkedIn to monetize. I built my whole agency on one platform just posting content.
Very interesting take on that. You mentioned something in terms of automation, and I think we must talk about this, especially in the context of crypto compliance, AML, KYC, which is the emergence of AI agents as an economic entity or as an economic population. We saw that late 24, early 25, there were frameworks like AI 16Z and ELISA and Talbot and a few others. We're talking the beginning of February. We just had a couple of weeks of Claudebot or Moltbot or Molt whatever their name is this week, and it's it's incredible how these autonomous digital beings have evolved in the last 6 months to the point where they're now in charge of entire economics. So you can have a wallet with crypto on it and say, just go multiply this by 12x until the end of the week, and they'll find a way their way, which could be controversial if you're not putting the guardrails on the thing in the right way, which most people will not. So in the emergence of this new type of, and I'm going to say being, but it's not, right? What are you seeing in the compliance space in terms of dealing with it? Is it identity? Is it counter agents? What is the nature of the response? And I know that especially regulators and legislators tend to move quite slowlier than the average innovator, but they're running out of choices at the moment. So what are you seeing in that space that caught your eye?
You know what's interesting? I see a lot of counter AI. So there's now so many compliance companies are putting, I don't want to say AI wrappers or chat GPT wrappers, but now they're AI powered companies are focused on all the challenges that we have in compliance, the tedious work, the investigation, all the administrative stuff. I haven't seen or heard anyone being like, hey, this tool is so amazing. But also banks, crypto exchanges aren't going to tell you what they're using behind the scenes because they don't want their competitors to know and use them as well. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of. With regards to AI agents using stablecoins to book your next vacation, I think it's just like anything else. Don't see this being like the biggest attack vector. You probably know several people in the space have lost millions of dollars because their wallets got drained. So I think it's this, and that was by them clicking a button, not their AI agent. So I'm worried that the AI agents are going to fall. The AI agents might do a better job of falling for scams than individuals, right? Because individuals are more impatient, where the AI agents doesn't have any concept for time or rushing for the most part. So I think we're going to see the same thing that we see now, right? Scams are going to be prevalent. That whoever builds these big AI scammers are going to be better than maybe somebody just learning. Like we saw it in COVID, everyone jumped online, and those businesses got hacked, cybersecurity issues, exploits, because they've never been online before. Now they have to go online within months. The last thing they're worried about is cybersecurity. They're worrying about how they can sell all the tchotchkes in their brick and mortar business now that nobody can come in. And I think you're going to see the same wave as new people get into AI agents, the same way that new people were getting into NFTs and all the rug pulls. You're going to see the same. I don't think it's going to be a travesty. I think there are going to be, companies that come up with AI agents that can better protect you because they can see the pattern of other AI agents that might be scammers or people are hackers. They might be able to see the patterns from those AI agents and at least better protect you, which is what we're seeing with companies like Blockade that are doing real time detection of like, hey, this wallet, this SDK, for this wallet, you be careful. We see alerts, it's irregular activity. You're going to be able to use AI to kind of pick up on some of those measures.
Especially on the on-chain side of things, where data is available and it's immutable, so you can interpret the past um, pretty well. I think we're going to see a lot of the forensics companies in this particular space who made bank on just cracking the code for humans, cracking the code for agents and doing this counter agent thing, because I think it's just only natural that we want to be able to protect that. One thing you said that I read the other day, a little bit on the contrary, which is um, the use of AI agents actually removes the emotion from the equation. So things that we would react quickly without a thought because we were anxious, excited, scared, the AI agent has less of that kind of interference, if you will. So they might be better at that. But then once again, if they're well trained, they'll see the pattern, they will avoid the pattern, and then a new pattern has to emerge to trick them. So I think we're going to see a lot of those battles. And maybe here's an idea, which is the fraud bot battle. In terms, I mean, everything is being gamified anyway, so why not?
Well, even if you look now, right, you can use AI tools to see if somebody else used AI to write certain things. So now it's like this whole AI use, AI counter uses. And we talked about emotion and fear. It's like, it feels like that's what our society is driven on right now. Like, I've never heard so many ists in my, like, Zionist, race. Like, I've heard so many ists, like, in the last 5 years, that words I've never ever heard before in my life. All of a sudden now people are calling the other people that. There's so much emotion, especially in the US. Like, a pin drops and it's like, no, it was Trump's fault. It was this. And I think you're going to remove a lot of that emotion. Plus, when you're using AI agents, like, AI agents don't have to virtue signal as hard as, so many people that are battling it out online, right? Like, if I say, hey, I love Trump, I'm stuck with that. A lot of people are stuck with that. I love Trump. That's it. He can do no wrong. I'll never call balls in, and that's the, like, game we're playing. Whether it's Trump or Gaza or Israel or Syria or Iran, it's all this. Hey, are you for Palestine or against it? Like, it's like, I can be for children not dying, but I can also be for the people that had their family kidnapped. I wouldn't like that either. So I don't have to be for a country or another country. I can just simply say I don't like these certain things. But that's not what TikTokification of the world is doing. They need your answers and your answers now. And if you don't answer in a split second, that, like, the internet is analyzing the way your lips move and the way your eyes move. So I think I don't mind AI agents booking things and, sending transactions, because it's going to remove a lot of that emotion, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on surveillance, which to me is kind of a line that we shouldn't cross as individuals in relationship with power. I am privacy prone, given my 2.5 years building Midnight. So to me, it is one of those things we're not talking enough about. We talk a lot about politics. We talk about a lot about wars and power, but we're not talking about privacy enough, I think. And obviously there's trade-offs, and the trade-offs require nuance, and online discourse and social media are terrible with nuance. They are totally stripping away the nuance. But yeah, I think you got 1 sense there.
See, I don't think we care about privacy. I think that's the problem with privacy, is we don't care about privacy. The same reason why we don't care about fraud. If we can call the credit card company and say, "Hey, I didn't make those charges. Please remove them." It doesn't come out of our pocket. And I think people don't see the negative side of privacy, because unless you're the victim of an intense phishing scam or you're not really seeing that you're in for, unless you're an in-person person getting kidnapped, because now people know that you have crypto. Unless you're seeing that, face to face in your own backyard, people are willing to give up all sorts of information to get that 10% off on Bed Bath and Beyond, or to sign up to the latest NFT, or to, log into a webinar. Like, look at all the information they're asking about to just log into a webinar these days. So I think people really don't care about privacy as much as we think they should. Although we see it in silos and the impact, because we're so close to it, I think the average human being cares very little about privacy. They care that Facebook may have or alleged stole their information and sold it. They care a little, but they don't really care, because Facebook didn't technically take money out of their pocket. Facebook just monetized on it. Like, they would care more if, Facebook somehow debited their account 10% and took that off the top. I think then they would care about privacy. But until it personally affects their pocketbook, I think people are pretty okay with everything that happens in the world. But it's when, you can't afford groceries, is when people are going to get up in arms and start, kind of pushing back on some of the policies and procedures that we're seeing all around the world.
That kind of echoes to my point, which is we don't talk about enough. We don't educate people enough, and it only matters when it only does, and that's too late. Like, it's the same with decentralization and self sovereignty. It's almost the same. Like, we're okay with the trade offs until it's unsurmountable, and then we can't claw back from it, right? So that's kind of where where I think this, and maybe we're too close to that now. Now, looking into the industry itself, what would you say is the one thing that we must fix right now before we work another, say, 17 years and look in hindsight and we didn't fix this one thing, and all of a sudden we're back to square one? What's that one thing and why?
Such a good question. I'd love to see a lot of the fraud and scams be taken out. Some of the easy stuff that's easily taken out. I like to see people speak with their money. But once again, we don't really care until we lose the money. But a lot of these exploits that we're seeing in DeFi, like they didn't do any kind of attestations, they didn't do any pen testing, they had very little cybersecurity audits or code, audits. And then we're shocked when the millions of dollars gets removed out of the protocol. It's because we're so focused on the hype. And I think that is what's always been crushing crypto, is that we're so focused, whether it's ICOs, then it was NFTs, then it was meme coins. Like we're so focused on the hype and speculation, which leads to a lot of the fraud and the scams. And it's hard to call them scams when you gave your crypto over to a person that didn't have hair. They had gold chains as hair coming out of their head, and now you're shocked that they didn't build this ecosystem that you thought they were going to build when they have no previous experience doing so. Now it's a rug pull. It's like, no, it's not really a rug pull when you just gave some random person that you don't know who they are your crypto. So I think we need to take a little bit more accountability as society and start talking with our money and put it into more compliance, security focused protocols, exchanges, etc. I think the second thing that's gonna it was exploited with FTX, and I'm gonna bet it could be exploited with any kind of crypto business, is the lack of like CRMs, the lack of silos between customer funds and operating funds. It's like these crypto investigation units running off of Google documents that old employers probably still have access to. I think that's where a lot of, that's what I think what's I think we haven't seen a bad case of it because FTX was a complete fraud, so we're not worried that they use QuickBooks to run their operations. But I think if we go under the hood at some of these companies, it's fine. I just made a post about I think this is a big risk that if we go under the hood of some of these companies, they're not as organized. They're not. If we audited them, I think we'd be surprised on what we see. And I think that's the scariest thing because we're now bringing on institutional money. We're now doing a lot of things here. And I don't think we have a lot of the internal, CRMs, the internal organization that we should have for some of these crypto businesses.
It's also an industry that doesn't stop. It runs 24/7. The blockchains don't care. As much as we love the ability to do weekend transactions, if you work in this industry, you're doing transaction monitoring at the same time, right? So how do you manage your mental health? You mentioned that if you don't write stuff, then you can't sleep. So what's your regimen to manage your mental health and your physical health as you work through this kind of nascent moment in the industry?
It's funny, when I worked at HSBC, I used to work 12-hour shifts. Like they paid overtime, so you try to work as much overtime as humanly possible. And HSBC is an Asian-based bank, so people work 16 hours out in Asia, and that's regular for them. Whereas like an 8-hour shift is like detrimental to our health nowadays. For me, it's just like trying to focus your extra time. And I was so upset that I used to make extra money, but I realized how frustrated I was as an investigator because I'm working every minute that I possibly could. And what I realized, if I spent those 4 hours a day doing things that I was interested in, like doing, like creating content, then I was actually better at my job for the other 8 hours versus working a 12-hour day and being frustrated because I'm tired, I'm not thinking as clearly. So I think for what I suggest to people is whatever that feels like for you, creating content for me is like I love connecting with people. I love leaving voice notes on LinkedIn. Whatever that is for you, to spend your extra time doing that. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive because traditional and crypto businesses kind of have this vibe that you should be working every waking hour for them. If you're going to work extra, if you're going to do extra stuff, it should be for them. And I think that's where you also have to create a lot of boundaries. I know that sounds like such a millennial word, boundaries, but like simply saying, no, I can't do that right now is powerful. The problem is nobody says no. They get so worked up that they're going to get fired and they're not going to get a promotion. And hey, you may not get a promotion if you say no enough. But if you're a hard worker and you just say, hey, like on Friday at 5 o'clock, I can't work that case that just came in, but let me get started first thing Monday morning with it. I'm going to organize myself on the weekend so Monday morning I can look over it and go hard on it. I think any reasonable person would be like, yeah, I respect that. But where people get caught, they say yes to everything, and now they're mad at their employer on Monday morning because they work late on Friday, they didn't get to go out. Where it's like your employer's not responsible for your happiness or your mental health, and they may have the programs and the spending accounts that you use to buy iPads instead of actually using it for your health because it's a big loophole, right? So I think people have to be responsible for their own health and be accountable. I'm not expecting any employer, any client to take care of those things for me. That's what companies are there to create the framework for you to work in the best conditions. But that's usually those best conditions are usually not going to lead to a healthy mental health lifestyle, in my opinion.
Well, it is an extraction system. So if you don't handle it yourself, you don't have agency over the things that you value, it's really hard to make of them a priority. I usually tell the professionals that I mentor, as like, do you have a hobby? And they're like, not really. I'm like, then get one. Like pottery, knitting, I don't care. One thing that takes your mind out of whatever it is that you work on, and it has a set time for you to just step away to force you out until you create the habit. Like that's it. Like because if you don't, then you're like, just another hour. Let me read this, or let me just fill this form out, or whatever the hell it is you do, and you're now all of a sudden stuck, right?
And I was telling my wife the other day, like she runs into the same problem. Like the more you work, the more hours you work, you're just creating more work. So if you work 12 hours instead of an 8 hour day, you just created 4 hours more work in that day. But that 4 hours produced a lot more work that you're now going to have to take on in the future. It's not just the 4 hours you're working that day. You have to, and it's hard to get off, as you say, once you're on that treadmill, the industry is not going to stop for you to take any sort of break. And then vacations don't end up being a break because then you're met with a wall of emails and documents and cases the second you step foot, to the point where, especially in investigations and compliance, we have to be forced to take vacation days and to take vacations because people don't want to go away because it's not exciting and relaxing. I think the other thing that would help with mental health is making sure you're in a good financial situation and saving money. So many people are in jobs they don't like, especially when it comes to financial services and compliance. Even in crypto, you're in bad situations, bad jobs, but you can't leave because you're overextended. You didn't live with it underneath your means, and now you're stuck. And to your point, once you get stuck, you have to keep on making that money. There's been so many opportunities for people to go from traditional to crypto, especially in compliance, but they wouldn't take it because they'd have to take a pay cut of $8,000 or $10,000. Not really with crypto experience. That's going to turn into an added income of $30,000, $40,000 the more experience you get. But because they were in a bad space financially, they couldn't make that jump. And I think that's the best advice I can give people is make sure you're saving your money as much as you can in any industry until you get a little bit of a stockpile, because the most richest people, they have options. I think that's the currency, is the options they have, not just the money they have, the options they have and how to utilize those options.
Yeah, my dad used to say, "Money's time," and that's what it is.
And it's hard to talk about it because then everyone comes down like, oh, money isn't everything. And,
Well, it isn't. It isn't, but it creates conditions for a lot of stuff. So, especially mental health.
exactly. That's what I say. It isn't everything, but it's a lot of things. So I'd rather have a lot of things sorted out by having enough money. And like, it's just great. I don't mind. I think a lot of money is good. You know what? I think I would be comfortable with you having a lot of money because you seem like a guy that knows what to do with it. And they'd probably just end up spending it on things to create more things, which build companies and build products and features. Where I don't think you're running out to buy a Lambo because you're making lots of money. And even if you wanted to, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's like, as soon as I talk about money, people like to take a lot of shots. It's like, well, I think money is a good thing. Money should be, the more I get, the more I have to spend to make more of it. So I'm putting more money in energy and in the cycle. But I think people forgot it. We forgot how to save, right? Because back in the day, I'm assuming we're around the same age and in maybe different circumstances, but we didn't have, like, our parents just didn't give us money to go do, like, you had to earn it. Whereas I think this generation, I know my kids, like, I just give them the money. They don't have to work or shovel the driveway. I'm part of the problem. I just give them the money.
Also this literacy we talked about, digital and privacy literacy, but there's also financial literacy, which is absolutely not something that is embedded in the educational system, and the system doesn't really like people who are educated about money, because then you can't fool them, right? So it is something that which to me is one of the things that comes with the agency of being self-sovereign that crypto proposes to you, which is the being your own bank comes with the risks of being a bank, but it comes with the independence of being your own bank as well. So again, trade-offs and all the nuance that we're talking about, they're all very much important. Um, in terms of onboarding people to the industry, you come from a non-crypto background. I'm sure that there are non-crypto people in your life still. Do they call you when there's a new all-time high of Bitcoin and like, hey, I want to come in now, can you help me out? Do you help them out? What's your process there?
You know, it's funny. I don't have as many crypto holdings. Being that early when crypto is $700, we all have the stories like, I wish I bought more. I'm not. I'm more of a lifestyle person, so I'm not like buying and holding anything. As much as I say the same, buying and holding crypto has never been that appealing to me. Like I love like NFTs. I love things that go along with crypto, but for most, to your point, when it's all time high, they ask like, "Hey, how much did you have?" Like, "Hey, are you rich now?" Or are you kind of like that's really what they're. I always try to warn people because when it goes up, you always have the guy that says, "Hey, Steven, oh, such a cool idea. This guy on WhatsApp says he can buy Bitcoin for us. We just have to send him." Like, no, no, like stay out of those chat rooms. Like, if you have to buy Bitcoin, do it yourself. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions, very, very, especially in the African American community. I think it's always hard because it's hard. I want to sound like, in my experience, I'll say in my experience, it's hard to trust your own people because when one person makes it, usually the way they make it, not usually the way they make it, but a lot of times what happens is it's like crabs in the bucket. They have to go back and monetize off of your own community. And what I saw a lot of, especially in not this recent cycle, the last cycle is like, I want to bring a million black people into the industry, but they're charging you for a $40 course of some sort. And it's like, yeah, I'd like to make $40 million too if the math works out. And then the next year you asking what happened, and now they're flipping Airbnbs. And I find that so specific to our community. It's hard to trust people in the community. And you very rarely see people that are helping people in the time that we started till now. It's very rarely this. And that's like across all ethnicities. I'm not just picking on the black community. But I find like educating people, like, are you interested in crypto? Is the same advice I got in crypto investigations. Are you interested in crypto? Because 3 months into this, the crypto novelty is going to wear off, and now you're just doing investigations. So you have to really like it and have to really be interested in it. I don't think there's many people in our community that are really interested in it. There's people that will play around now because of Robinhood. They can buy $100 worth of shares of Coinbase or other things and buy crypto. But there's no one that I think it's hard for me to onboard and think. And I know so many people in our industry are like setting up their kids with like RWAs and all these other things. I'm not really there yet. I buy my kids a lot of crypto books, and hopefully, they when they start hearing about it, they'll come to me and ask. But I don't want to force it on them either.
My kids are a little bit older, so they're adults. So crypto to them is dad's job. So it's like eye rolling when I talk about crypto. It's just like, oh, work. So it's it's a different dynamic.
Yeah, they hear about it enough in the background. They're like, I'm not asking. He's gonna go on forever, but I'm not asking him about it.
Yeah, yeah, the blockchain, dad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome, man. So we're about time here. I don't want to hold you longer than we have to, but this was awesome. Thanks so much for joining. How can people learn more about you, the work you do with Airdropped and everything else?
You can reach out to us. I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day. That's the best place to reach out to us. So it's Stephen Sargeant. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. It's like, just reach out to me. I love talking about crypto compliance, especially. I've created my own AI, so based on all my content. So if people have the same question, usually, how do I get into crypto compliance? My AI will answer it. It keeps some of my sarcasm, which is awesome. And we just created a very small community. Actually, we haven't launched it publicly, but for those that really want to get into the industry and are looking for every advantage, and I see that they're putting in work, we create a small community for like 20, 30 people where we can give them references, connections, help them, mentor them, and give them advice, discounts on certifications. So if anyone's really interested, if you're just passively like interested in crypto, that's probably not the best place for you. So I'm one of those guys. If you say you're going to do something, I'm following up with you and be like, hey, did you take that course you said you're going to do? Did you attend that webinar? I'm kind of like annoying if you're not serious, but I'm good for a lot of people that are serious. They're like, oh, I need this kind of kick in the bum to get moving. So that's where you can see us. Our clients, you'll probably see a lot of our content. It's pretty. It resonates with a lot of people. So if you see high quality content in crypto compliance on LinkedIn, I hope that we did it.
Awesome, man. Thank you once again, and looking forward to your next London visit. Maybe the next time you will ping me.
I have to do a proper part. I did a small thing. It was in a dark pub. I'm like, oh, I have to reach out to like Penny at Hummingbird. She always throws the best parties in London. So I'll definitely do something a lot bigger the next time I come.
Awesome. We'll be there. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you later. Bye for now.
All right. Thank you.
Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDropsPodcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberboom Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Stephen for such an engaging conversation. Love having you on the show. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.